ಯೂಟ್ಯೂಬ್ ಲಿಂಕ್ ಬರ್ತಾ ಇದೆ,
ಹ್ಞೂ
ಲಿಂಕ್ ಬರ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ನಾನು ಇವಾಗ ಕನೆಕ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದೆ OBS ಅಲ್ಲಿ.
ಹ್ಞೂ ಸ್ಟ್ರೀಮಿಂಗ್ ಕೊಟ್ಟೆ, ಬರ್ತಾ ಇದೆಯಾ? ಆಡಿಯೋ ಬರ್ತಾ ಇದೆಯಾ ನೋಡು.
ಏನು ಮಾತಾಡಬೇಡಿ, ಆಲ್ರೆಡಿ ಲೈವ್.
ಬರ್ತಾ ಇದೆಯಾ?
ಇದು
ಇಲ್ಲ, ಇಂಟರ್ನೆಟ್ ಸ್ಲೋ ಇದೆ ಇವತ್ತು.
ಇದನ್ನು ಕನೆಕ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿಬಿಡ್ತೆ.
ಯಾವುದು?
ಹಾಟ್ಸ್ಪಾಟ್.
ನಂದು ಏರ್ಟೆಲ್ಲು ಇನ್ನೂ ಕೆಟ್ಟದಾಗಿರುತ್ತೆ. I'll take a leak and come back.
YouTube is not receiving enough channels to maintain. YouTube link ಕಳಿಸಿ ನೋಡುವ. YouTube link
ಯಾಕೆ ಯಾವುದು ಕೈ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು? ಮುಗಿದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಇನ್ನು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಅದೇ ಎರಡು ಕೆಲಸ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ಮುಗಿದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಸಿಗ್ತದ ಗೊತ್ತೈತೆ. Different height of those people. ಮತ್ತೆ ಮ್ಯೂಟ್ ಮಾಡಿಲ್ಲ, ಮ್ಯೂಟ್ ಆಗಿಲ್ಲ.
ಯಾರನ್ನೂ ಬಿಟ್ಟಿಲ್ಲ. Hello. ಇದನ್ನು ಕೂತ್ಕೊಳ್ತೀನಿ ಅದನ್ನ ಆಮೇಲೆ ಕಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ ಯೂಟ್ಯೂಬಿಂದ ಕೂತ್ಕೊಂಡು ಏನಾಗಿಲ್ಲ ಹಾಂ ಏನಿಲ್ಲ ನೀವು ಕೂತ್ಕೊಂಡು 7 more minutes. We have about 12 people. ಆಗಿದೆ ಯೂಟ್ಯೂಬ್ ಬಂದರೆ ನೀವು ಹೋದ್ರೆ ಬಂತಾರೆ
ಏನು
ನಿಮ್ಮ ಫೋನ್ ಸೈಲೆಂಟ್ settings. ಗೌತಮ್ ಅದೇನು ಮಾಡಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋಗ್ಬೇಡ ನೀನು ಸುಮ್ಮನೆ ವಿಡಿಯೋ ಆನ್ ಮಾಡಿಬಿಟ್ಟು ಅದೆಲ್ಲ ಅಡ್ಮಿಷನ್ ಅದೆಲ್ಲ ನಾನು ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ
ಅಲ್ಲ ನಾನು ಸ್ಕ್ರೀನ್ ಶೇರ್ ಮಾಡೋಕ್ಕಲ್ಲ
ಅದೊಂದು ಮಾಡ ಸೈಡಕ್ಕೆಲ್ಲ ಹೋಗ್ತಿಲ್ಲ ಸ್ಕ್ರೀನ್ ಇವಾಗಲೇ ಶೇರ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ
ಅಲ್ಲ ಒಂದು ಇದಾಕ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಮಾಡೋಣ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪೆರಿಮೆಂಟಲ್ ಲೋಗೋ ಇದು
ಎಲ್ಲದು ಇಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ
ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಕಿಡ್ಸ್ ಅಂತಾನೆ ಇದೆ ಮೋಸ್ಟ್ಲಿ ಇದರಲ್ಲಿ ಕಮೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ ಆಗಿರ್ಬೋದು
ಕರೆಕ್ಟಾಗಿದೆ ಏನಿದೆ
ಆಗ್ಲಾಗಣ
ಇಪ್ಪತ್ತೆರಡು ಜನ
ಗೊತ್ತಾಯ್ತು
22 ಈಗ 1 ನಿಮಿಷಕ್ಕೆ ಬಿಡ್ತೀನಿ ನಾನು
ನಾನು ಮೈಕ್ ಆನ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊತೀನಿ
ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ
ಅಷ್ಟೇ ಬಿಡಿ ಏನು ಮಾಡೋಕ್ಕಾಗಲ್ಲ
ಹಲೋ ಇಲ್ಲ 6 ಸೌಂಡ್ ಇರೋದು ಇದ್ದವ್ರಿಗೆ ಸಾಲ್ವ್
ನೋಡಿ ನೋಡೋಣ ಅಷ್ಟೇ ಅಲ್ಲಿ
2 ನಿಮಿಷ
ಸ್ಟುಡಿಯೋ ಹೊಟ್ಟೋಗ್ತೀನಿ.
ಅಲ್ಲ ಇಲ್ಲೂ ಖಾಲಿ.
ಯಾವುದೋ ಒಂದು ವರ್ಕ್ಶಾಪು ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾರೋ
ಕನೆಕ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿ
ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಸಾರಿ.
ನೋ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್.
ಯೂಟ್ಯೂಬ್ ಎಲ್ಲರೂ
ಎಲ್ಲ ಯೂಟ್ಯೂಬ್ ಇಲ್ಲ.
ಯೂಟ್ಯೂಬಲ್ಲಿ ಇಲ್ಲೇ ಮಾಡಿ. ಹಾಂ ಪರವಾಗಿಲ್ಲ, ನಾವೇ ಎಡಿಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ. ಸರಿ, ಅದು ಅಡ್ಮಿಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ ಅದನ್ನು. ಅಡ್ಮಿಟಿಂಗ್
Good afternoon, very warm welcome to all of you to today's discussion. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Fantastic. Uh, we'll start in just a couple of minutes. I have shared my screen. That's visible. Fantastic. Yeah, I suppose we can start. Once again, I'll li- like to welcome all of you to today's discussion. And I'm Gautam. I'm a physics educator and an education enthusiast. Right? I'm sure you're familiar with the title of the subject that we are going to discuss today. It's Socratic method. Uh, I just want to know if you people are familiar with this particular method.
ಕೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Gautam, you're audible.
Thank you, Vidya. Okay, maybe I'll have to talk a little louder. Okay, fantastic. So, the reason why I chose this topic for today's discussion is that it seems to be the need of the hour with NCF laying out the guidelines for how a classroom should be going further. One of the key component that seems to surface out multiple times in the document is student engagement and active participation of students in the classroom. There are several teaching practices that we can take into classrooms, but this particular method that we'll be talking about, and also we'll solicit the opinion of several experts who will be joining us as part of today's discussion, is one of these ways that has been tested through time. Socrates was someone who lived before Christ, and it's been over 2,000 years of history, and then people have time and again used this particular method to arrive at magnanimous inferences, not only just observing nature, but in various other walks of academic pursuits. Uh, to begin with, let us try and understand what Socratic method is. Uh, if all of you can just take 30 seconds of time, and maybe if you have a sheet of paper and pen with you, you may just try and note down what you think Socratic method is. That will kind of help us to go further and maybe consolidate over the idea. uh, when it comes to an academic environment, there are several ways of transacting with the information. In Socratic method, the idea is to converse argumentatively by posing question and answering those questions. So it is all about asking questions that intend to communicate something in specific, and then trying to answer that question as you know uh, knowledgeably as possible, so that this not only leads to a particular outcome but also kind of opens up the horizon for further pursuit of the science in discussion. So that said, Socratic method is something that is just not relevant in science classrooms, but also in any classroom that you can think of. It is something that any teacher can use as a teaching practice. So I think as we go through this discussion, there are several objectives to it. But first among all of these is to talk about the relevance of this, or what difference it makes in our classrooms. Uh, Here again, we as teachers often try and come up with different ways of putting things forth to our students. But if you are talking about a very specific method like Socratic method, then what is it that it's gonna help us do? Pardon?
Opening browser.
May I request all the participants to put your mics on mute, please? I think someone's mic is on. Okay, I think we can continue. Yeah. So that is something that we'll first try and identify, because all that we do as teachers, we do it to make a difference in our classrooms. So first thing to talk about is the difference that a method like this will bring. A method of posing questions and eliciting answers, and then uh, basing the classroom and its progress on a set of questions essentially. uh, to do which we will ourselves take up a few questions today. So I have a very simple question here: why are mushroom not plants? Again, someone's mic is on. Kindly put your mic on mute. Thank you. So here is a question. Some of you may be teaching bio, but some of you may not be. But then just record your responses. If you have a sheet of paper and pen with you, couple of statements will do. Why are mushroom not plants? And as teachers, let's try and visualize how we would often answer a question like this. Considering this is the question that a student comes to us with, how do we often go forward with it? Just if we just reflect for a few seconds, then in a regular scenario, when a student approaches us with a question like this, the most common practice is to very methodically explain why mushrooms are not plants, by talking about what mushrooms feed on, or the kind of environment in which mushrooms thrive, and the way the classification of mushrooms into a particular you know category. So there are bunch of things that we can discuss very methodically, and in fact this is what happens in most classrooms.
Screenshots actually.
Okay, can you see the screen that I have shared? Please give me a thumbs up if the screen that I've shared is visible.
With that, the start package.
I'm sorry to
Background.
pause, but I just want to know if the screen is visible.
Yes, visible, visible. Screen is visible.
So yeah, sorry.
You
Maybe
can
there was
see, sir, your screen is visible.
yeah. Okay, yeah. Okay. So maybe there was some Okay, I'm sorry. There was some miscommunication. Maybe. Okay, the screen is visible. Okay, fantastic. So this is often what happens in a classroom. As teachers, we kind of read through bulk of materials, and kind of consolidate on a lot of information, and we trim it to the needs of our classroom, and then deliver it to the students in a very ready to consume form. And and most of the times children in our setups are habituated to such form of learning. I think most of you can concur with me. Give me a thumbs up if you think this is what happens in most cases. So where a teacher makes all the effort to come up with answers that students can readily consume, and nothing much progresses from there, for the fact that once the student gets the answer, it kind of puts a logical end to the pursuit there. So how differently can we deal with this scenario? I have presented a scenario A where a random teacher, takes up this question, why mushrooms are not plants, from student, and then very methodically explains the solution to the student. But what if you know we can do it a little differently? Say, when a student comes to us with this question, what if a teacher decides to kind of ask a bunch of questions that will help us build an answer to the topic in discussion? So what if a child comes to us and asks what why mushrooms are not plants, and what if we ask the child what are some similarities between a mushroom and a plant, or what are some differences that you see? Is there a difference in their habitat? And several such questions which will help the child kind of, from its knowledge and from what it has observed, register a few similarities and differences, based on which we may conclude or we may not conclude mushrooms are plants, or based on which a child may try and find out if mushrooms are not plants, then why they are not plants. How do you think this particular scenario you know helps us do better? If at all you think it helps us do better in our classrooms, I just want you to just reflect on this and think, in what ways can this particular method help us make our classrooms more interactive? That's something that we should reflect on. Okay, so maybe you can all take some couple of seconds and then just reflect on how scenarios A and B could help us achieve different things to begin with. I think Dr. Vidya, an educationist, is with us. Vidya, what do you think? How do you think these two scenarios can make a difference?
Hi, Gautam. Good
Hello.
afternoon, everyone. Yeah, as you said, yes, I agree with you. This makes a lot of difference in classroom, as every individual cognitive ability is disturbed at the beginning by asking a question, or the question may be raised by students, why are mushrooms not plants, instead of scenario A, where as teachers we tend to give information. And here in 21st century, information is available in plenty. So giving out information is not our objective as teachers, but to raise such a question which creates a cognitive dissonance in child, and child will be able to answer or come up with these questions, give answers, explore, find similarities and differences, find what is the difference between two, and why it is not called a plant, or why it is not a plant, or why is it a plant. The child will be able to arrive at an answer through inquiry. So this leads to what is called as inquiry, questioning, and finding answers on their own. And this will lead to a pupil involvement in classroom. So this makes a lot of difference according to me.
Okay, I think a few participants want to add a few more points, starting with Miss Priya D. Is there something that you want to share?
Yes, as Madam said, it depends on the individual student. Instead of creating such questions, students can come up with their own ideas.
Okay. No, in this particular case, let's assume that the student has come to us with that question, and what I
Yes.
presented were two scenarios, pertaining to how a teacher could respond. Scenario A, where teacher could, give out that trim-made answer, or scenario B, where the teacher could leave the student with set of questions which will eventually nudge the student towards the answer that it is in pursuit of. I think Princey Anish also wants to add. So, okay, anyways, as what Priya and Ma'am were indicating, the outcome varies from student to student. But then one thing is, when students are put on the pursuit of answers by posing questions in a particular sequence, in a chronological set of questions. One thing is that the student's involvement in construction of the knowledge is much more, or perhaps in scenario A, the student involvement is just absorb and remember, but for that there is no cognitive evolution that is happening. Yeah, I think Vijaya Sundari madam wants to add something, ma'am. I see a couple of hands raised here.
Shubham Dalal.
Yes, Mr. Shubham Dalal can contribute. Okay, I think we don't have them with us. Maybe. So yeah. So as Vidya was telling us, one thing is you know the child is actively involved in this process. We have someone. Okay, yeah. So that said, if I could kind of consolidate these ideas of what possibly the scenarios A and B could lead in terms of outcome at the student's end, while scenario A will kind of help a student very clearly understand what the why mushrooms are not plants, and then maybe also kind of give out a well framed answer that mushrooms are saprotrophs, they feed on decaying organic matter, and they do not produce their own food. While the student will be able to recall it, most often it will remain back as a standalone fact with the child. Whereas most of the science that we study is often not a collection of standalone points, but it is a web of these facts connected together that forms a concept, uh, you know, to begin with, and there is a possibility that we can go to a bigger canvas or see things from a bigger perspective. That is something that we can achieve with scenario B, where we ask the child to come up with set of similarities and differences between mushrooms and plants, and slowly nudge the child towards that particular reason why mushrooms are not considered to be plants. When we do it, we well have made the child capable of answering that particular question, as to why mushrooms are not plants. But now the child is also able to kind of reason it out, in the sense that it can very methodically present those similarities and differences, and the basis on which mushrooms are classified differently, or why mushrooms are classified as saprotrophs, perhaps. you know that is something that we can achieve if we can put the children through a set of questions. Obviously these questions will have to be framed in a way that the answers to these sub questions that we pose to the child will lead the child towards the answer to the first question, right? Once we achieve it, we only we not only end up kind of giving away the information, but also help the child in building this concept web, a big or a broader picture of ideas put together. I suppose all of you can agree with me. uh, if you agree with me, please give me a thumbs up. Okay, fantastic. So that said, one thing that this particular discussion until now has led is that asking questions will one help our children kind of paint a bigger picture, in the sense that the children will be able to kind of pursue things in a more synchronous fashion. They'll be able to pursue concepts and understand how these concepts are linked together, these ideas are linked together. Okay, but that's not it. But that is not it. The dividend of Socratic methods, or perhaps dividends of Socratic method, are much more. Okay, to kind of further our discussion, I have one more scenario here that I want to present. Uh, See, here is a small video. It's me dropping.
Present the screen.
The screen is not visible, is it?
Your presentation is not visible.
Is it okay? I'm sorry. Let me check.
जी he kindly share the screen to view the video?
Yeah, I'll do that. Maybe.
Screen.
Okay, can you see it now?
No, no, we are not
No, sir.
able to see.
How about now? Is it visible?
Yes, sir, we can see.
Yeah. So fantastic. Here is a small video. Okay, so and in one hand I have a sheet of paper. On the other, I held a book made of several such sheets of paper tucked together. When dropped from the same height, the observation is that the book fell faster onto the ground than the paper did. Okay, so this often leads to a common misconception. Or if you were to kind of infer from this video, you know that the sheet of paper is lighter than the lighter than the book. So for someone who just sees this and is not knowledgeable about anything else, one thing that we can perhaps infer out of the observation that we just were made available to is that something that is heavier falls faster. Okay, as teachers we may have different answers to this, but then let us talk about what a child would generally think of when he or she sees something light fall slower than something that which is heavier. Okay, so that often leads to a very common misconception. Do heavier objects fall faster than lighter objects? Okay, so I think this is a very common misconception. I think all of you will agree with me. This is something that we often discuss at a good length in our physics classes. Okay, so you well can do an experiment. You can uh, do n things in a laboratory to arrive at an answer for this question. But how about we ask another question right after this and try and arrive at an answer for this question just by posing questions without doing anything without investigating physically, so to say. You know, what if we ask, uh, what will happen? You know, if we tie them together, if heavy objects fall faster than lighter objects, then what will happen if we tie them together and drop them? We have tied them with a string and we drop them. What do you think will happen? Here I want all of you to take maybe 30 seconds of time and think of a response. What do you think will happen? We'll assume that the heavier object is falling faster than the lighter object, and here what we have done is we have tied them together with a string and we'll drop them together. Okay, so maybe all of you will all of you can take 30 seconds of time and just think of a response. It could be anything that occurs to you. It's absolutely fine. Okay, do all of you have some response that you could think of?
To gravitational forces on response.
Okay, due to gravitational force. Okay, so we are getting a few responses here.
Ask them to drop their
Yeah, you can drop your responses in the chat window.
acceleration due to gravity, falling objects independent of the mass.
Okay, so that is one response we have, but how do you arrive at it?
Circumstances.
Yes. See, here I want you to perhaps.
Circumstances of
Both objects.
Heavy objects will pull lighter object along with it.
Okay, so heavier object will pull lighter object along with it. We have a response. Then what will happen to the lighter object? Will it not pull back the heavier object? Say me and another person, we are tied together. Say we run together, but I run faster than him. Then what happens is I get pulled back, whereas the one who is running slower will get pulled a little faster because I'm trying to run faster, right? So yes, as we are looking at your responses, we are getting an eclectic set of responses here. We are looking at several different possibilities, and some of us may have given correct answer to this because we have studied the required set of principles to come up with the right answer for this particular question. But let me get back to that question we were talking about. So what if heavy objects fall faster than lighter objects, then what will happen if we tie them together, tie them to the ends of a string and drop them? So if I'm not kind of aware of a lot of principles, say laws of motion, gravitation, presence of air, and another 10 things that I should know to come up with the right answer, one of the possible things is maybe the lighter object gets pulled forward, it moves faster than before. Consequently, the heavier object slow down a little, maybe as someone suggested here, the either objects may pull each other, because the faster one is trying to the heavier one is trying to go faster, it may try to pull the lighter one forward, whereas the lighter one which is trying to go a little slow will pull it you know backward, owing to the reason maybe the heavier object will fall down a little slower than it did before when dropped by itself. Maybe the lighter object will fall a little faster than before. Okay, that could be one of the possibilities. The other possibility is that now together, the heavier stone and the lighter stone together, tied together, if we look at it as one part and a single object, now together they are heavier than any one of the objects before. So by the logic that heavier objects will fall faster, if tied together, the heavier and the lighter one, together they'll weigh more than any individual object would. By that virtue, maybe together they'll faster, they'll fall faster than either objects, when they were dropped individually to, in the beginning, right? That also could be a possibility, right? Okay. So, in fact, if you have any contentions, you can please, drop your contentions. Let us open up the, platform for discussion. Please, if you have contentions here, please put them forward. So we are looking at two different possibilities. One that these two objects will kind of move independently, but because of the string that connects them, they may pull each other. The other that because they are tied together, they may constitute one single heavier object, heavier than any individual stone taken as it is. So they would rather fall together, they would fall much faster than the two individual objects independently did. So now here we had an observation, and then based on that observation we tried to infer something, and all that we needed to do to validate that particular inference was ask a question. Okay, now what you find in this particular situation is that the two answers that we have come up for the question, what will happen if we tie the two stones together, are contradicting. So if my answer A seems to be correct, so does answer B. But they both simultaneously cannot be true, right? They are contradicting each other. While both of them internally seem consistent, but when I take them together, they are not, concurring with each other. So the correct answer possibly is different from these two. And what could be different than these two? It is to say that both of them will fall together, perhaps. That objects accelerate together, and in the video where we saw the paper fall slower than the collection of papers, essentially the book, it could be owing to several different reasons. Okay. Well, this particular discussion that we had will perhaps reflect on another dividend of Socratic method. While we analyze through the first question, which is why mushrooms are not plants, we saw that by posing a series of questions, we could help the child build a web of concepts, or we could kind of help the child see things from a bigger perspective, but not as individual fact or factoids, or just not as another bullet point that the child will write and remember, but as a very concrete concept. While that is very important, what also is important is to develop the reasoning ability of children in our classrooms. And as you could see here, in order to reason out to a particular outcome here, in order to explain the observation we just did with respect to the dropping of the book and the paper, asking a very simple question as to what would happen if we tie the two objects together led us to kind of logical impasse, in the sense that we some of us came up with answer A, some of us could have thought about answer B, but then when we take both answers together, we are at an impasse, in the sense that both are internally consistent, but at the same time they're not kind of concurring with each other. So that basically means that there is a third possibility. Okay, so here questioning helped us to do something different. It perhaps helps us to build reasoning in children. Okay, so as educators, I think these are the two key elements which we wish to bring into our classrooms. One is to kind of deliver the subject that we deliver in a conceptual manner, in the sense that students not only end up with bunch of facts that they remember and reproduce in exam, but as applicable skills. So the ideas that we teach our children translate into applicable skills only when they consume it as concepts, only when they kind of know how that particular idea is linked to several other ideas. Okay, so here again, maybe we can solicit Dr. Vidya's opinion. Vidya.
Yes, Gautam. Hi. Yeah, as you said, we have a larger picture, and we are interested in holistic development of the child. It's not only delivering content, whether it can be science, maths, English. Whatever we do should develop some abilities in child. Like as you said, if we sort of stick on to this method, or if we use Socratic method in our teaching, will be obviously developing critical thinking, logical reasoning in a child, and also it will help the child to solve problems. So, on a larger picture, we are developing a lot of abilities in child, which is very important. As teachers, we should take care of that.
Yes. I have Vijeta here, another education enthusiast. Let us also listen to his perspective on this.
Okay, when it comes to analyzing situation like this, I think throwing up more and more scenarios like this will help students analyze each of the scenarios and come up with their responses. It's not about whether they're coming with right or wrong responses. It is about the process where they think through the situations, develop an explanation to a scenario like this or in any other case, so that helps them come up with thinking critically about these situations and arriving at more rational outcomes based on the situation. So this will kind of, they can carry over these skills to any other situation they face with, which will help them own up to situation and come up with their responses, rather than on the other front just feeding them information. I think that's where
Yeah.
the difference comes in.
Yeah, exactly. The thing is, when children are given away with ready-made answers, as we were talking about when we were, you know, or reviewing through the first question that we worked with. One thing is they become habitual of consuming knowledge, but they will not be, competent enough to build new knowledge. That's something we should, you know, reflect upon, because uh, as someone was just suggesting that the main objective of NEP is to make our classrooms more inquisitive, in the sense that children should be given more opportunity to build and understand the knowledge that they should be consuming. Whereas in a regular scenario, in a regular setup where we teachers do a lot of homework and keep things ready for the children, while we are effectively delivering the subject which we intend to deliver in our classrooms, the outcome at the student's end is not all holistic, in the sense that the child is well consuming that knowledge. Most of our children do write exams and pass it with flying colors, but then how much of our effort is translating into skills in these children? How much of what they learn are they learning to the extent of application? How much of it can they use in a day-to-day life? Because most of the science that we teach, at least as high school educators, these are very fundamental ideas that are relevant to a lot of things that we do in our day-to-day lives. But often we even we even see our children fail in recognizing these ideas as they manifest around us, right? So that is because, one, they have been consuming knowledge as some vocabulary, in the sense that it is a set of statements and phrases that they should remember and write in an exam. So this happens because they are made readily available to them. But just a little, readjustment, in the sense that instead of leading the class by these bullet points, let us lead our classes with a bunch of question marks. So these question marks will, while they also help us deliver the subject that we intend to, but will also kind of make the children think. I think all of you can agree with me at this point here. If someone has something to add, please feel free.
Yeah. I want to add, Gautam. Yes,
Yes.
I agree with you completely. Here we are not only it's again scenario A where we are giving information. So child may receive it as a piece of information, and how much the child will internalize the idea, we are not sure. But going through scenario B, that is learning through questioning or presenting different scenarios where child will come up with different ideas, and which will create a state of unrest. And to come out of that unrest or to come to equilibrium, any child will try to find answers. And with going through this process, child will internalize the new idea. So
Yes.
once the internalization is success or it's complete, the child will be able to apply it in a new situation. So it can be anything. So that will be a great leap from taking information as against internalizing and applying it in different scenarios.
Okay. If anyone of you have any points to add here, I think Ms. Hemavati wants to contribute, and I don't think she's responding. If there is anything that any one of you want to add, please feel free. Okay, anyways, we'll continue further. Yes, as we were discussing, uh, see, one thing that kind of is coming out, you know, is anything. Okay, so fine, fantastic. So one thing that kind of we can kind of conclude over at this point is that when we go to the classroom with a set of questions, we not only will deliver the subject that we intend to, but we also kind of put children through a cycle of thinking, a cycle of churning, or a cycle of an effort to build that knowledge that they should be consuming. Now that effort makes a lot of difference, in the sense that the children will now be able to kind of you know learn that concept, and also at the same time think of in how many different ways they can use it, and also think of in the sense that how that particular concept that they are learning is linked to several other things that they already have learned, or they may also kind of go further and talk about things that they can learn in addition or in succession to it. So that's something. And it's not that all children will kind of readily adopt to this kind of you know methodology, but then uh, once we start once things get rolling, they kind of roll much faster than we think it does. Okay, so this said, until now we were discussing about an idea. We were talking about a particular method of conducting our classrooms by posing questions, and what we have tried to do until now is to see the dividends of that methodology when it comes to teaching of science mostly, where one you know particular thing that we could see what questioning helps is to develop the conceptual web in children, and the second thing is to sharpen their reasoning ability. Now, that said, I think my screen is, let me reshare it. I'm sorry. Is the screen visible now?
No, sir, not yet.
How about now?
No, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now we can see.
Fantastic. Okay. So that said, see, all of this, seems to be very nice. You know, questioning as a teaching practice to build, conceptual web, or to build this reasoning ability in children, but that perhaps will lead to a good temperament. It cultivates, it fosters good learning habits in children. Specifically in science, it fosters the culture of inquiry in children, in the sense that children will uh, stop taking answers but come up with more questions, and it kind of is a self-sufficient process after children kind of get used to this. Now let us talk about a few things that are very very relevant, because as teachers we are not unaware of new ideas, but we always are restricted by a bunch of limiting factors, as I see. So I think some of these are the factors that all of us will be concerned about when it comes to taking a new teaching practice into our classrooms. Starting from time management, and if you are looking at a pedagogical practice like Socratic method, then how do we compile these questions and how do we keep it ready? What resources do we require? And obviously, how do students cope up? Okay, so here again, we'll take in the opinion of Dr. Vidya on these matters. Let us first listen to Dr. Vidya, and then I have a few points to add. Dr. Vidya.
Yes, Gautam. I think, yeah, all these things will come up in any teacher's mind. And if you ask me, this can be done with whatever time is given or allotted to any teacher. Time management should not be an issue if we are prepared for the class with focused set of questions, which leads to the next stage of the lesson, and we are not deviating. So we are going in a particular path or taking children in a particular path. Initially, if we start doing that, then time management should not be an issue. If the content competency is good, compiling the right question should not matter. And when it comes to students, what can I say? Adults are difficult to I mean, they take little more time than adopting, but children will adopt to it very soon because their involvement is more and their learning is better and internalization is better. With that, they feel a joy of learning. So students coping up with this should not be a matter at all. And resources required, yes, that needs little help, maybe a library.
Vidya, I think you are not audible.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was on mute all this time. Yes, as you said, all these things are the questions which comes to any teacher's mind, and this should be taken care of. And it's not that it is not possible. Time management comes with compiling the right set of questions. So, if a teacher prepares a focused set of questions where the child is taken in a particular direction without any deviation, then you will be able to achieve the learning objective of the day. And when it comes to how students cope, students adoption is much faster and easier as compared to adults. That's what I believe. So if students feel they are involved in learning and they are able to internalize the new idea, and if they feel the joy of learning, students cope very soon. So that should not be a matter at all. This will be a dividend of all other three: time management, compiling of right set of questions, and resources required. Of course, teachers can depend on library, a mentor, and whatever possible, but it requires little effort, and with little effort this should be pulled off well.
Okay, I think Vijeta has a couple of points. Come on.
Yeah, of course, this comes down to overall planning of the sessions. But I think looking at the current access to information and technology that the students have, uh, I feel we have a bigger question here about how much of teaching should we do in a class, and how much of it can we flip it so that students can come prepared of whatever part of learning outcome that we want to give students, so that when it comes to time management, especially for syllabus completion, we should try to make children a little more responsible. When can we make that happen? When we uh, make them owners of their learning by telling that, by giving them specific tasks that they can complete at home. We will have more time to have question driven learning in classroom, even though there is slight digression and a little more time consumed in addressing different concepts that are not specifically in the curriculum. A part of learning of syllabus should be, you know, we should try to make it outside the classroom as well. So that is one part where I feel time management can be achieved in a much better manner. Uh, Other part about resources required, definitely it can be much better if we can plan it way in advance. And in some cases, especially in many of the cases, we don't need any sophisticated resources to handle this kind of a session, especially in the example that Gautam was showing today, where it's about two paper bundles falling. It doesn't require any sophisticated tool at all. So we will have to see wherever it requires a specific curated resource. It's a duty as a teacher for me to figure out what is the right resource uh, to come prepared for the classroom. So all in all, I think this should be the way of preparing students to uh, drive their learning and make them more self-conscious about this is the way I should learn, rather than again keep feeding information to their brain all the time.
Yeah,
Uh,
information as it is, we know it's available abundantly.
yes,
If we'll become another information givers if we are only giving information. So
absolutely. So, as both Vidya and Vijeta were reflecting upon, see today with a lot of information that is put out in in social media and various other platforms. There is nothing that you cannot YouTube out today. Pretty much anything a child wishes to learn, all that information is orated very well in multiple different channels on YouTube. So the access to content is something that today we are not in short supply of. But uh, but all this information that a child can access will not foster the child for tomorrow's necessities, in the sense that as long as the child is just you know required to remember and reproduce things, it's fine. It is fine that it is given all that information, but eventually these children grow up into adults, and then that's when it is expected for them to construct their own knowledge. And our conventional methods kind of fall short there, in the sense that uh, it is something that most teachers, most of us as teachers can agree to, that most children, when they get into professional courses or into research, they find it very inconvenient to sail through those years, owing to the reason that that's when the idea of working towards the information or constructing that knowledge is more prevalent. No one teaches at that point in time. You are expected to kind of rise up to the situation. And I think the only way we can kind of ensure that these children who pass out of our classrooms to different labs in the country, you know kind of rise up to the occasion and do cutting edge research, is by putting them into the habit of you know posing questions and seeking answers. Okay, so in fact, once we kind of adopt to it in a fundamental way, we can, to begin with, just talk about starting our sessions with one question. We need not talk about asking 10 questions in a class. Instead of going into a classroom and writing the title for the discussion and directly discussing the subject content to be discussed, what if, just think of what difference it will make if we start with a question, and most of the times we do, right? So all of us can realize how contrasting the two things could be: to write the title of the chapter and start discussing chapter, to start with a question and allow some 10 minutes of pondering over that question. If even if children spend those 10-15 minutes trying to come up with answers, they'll come up with thousands of answers perhaps, because as a teacher I have seen it happen in my class. When the question is posed, right or wrong, at a formative stage there is nothing right or wrong. So children kind of open up, and there is a multitude of answers that we can see. And that thought process is something that we need to foster. And maybe from starting our classes with one question to maybe then going and asking two questions or three and more, will only foster that culture, will make that culture more prevalent in classroom, and hence becomes the way science or any other subject is learned. What do you say, Vidya?
Yeah, definitely. And posing questions depends on how well we plan those questions and how appropriate the question is for that day's learning outcome. And
Exactly.
children don't come with a clean slate. We all know they have some information in hand, and let's tap that information, frame questions based on that information, and lead the lesson of that day, or for that 40 minutes class or whatever.
Yes.
So their previous knowledge and previous information, we have to use frame questions based on that, link to today's lesson, and go forward for the development of that day's lesson. So that should not be a problem at all.
Absolutely. So, see, the question, the habit of questioning, kind of leads to a good work culture, in the sense that, questioning leads to generation of ideas, and then, then comes the effort, because once we have these ideas, and when we see that these ideas sometimes are in, tandem with each other, and sometimes they're kind of contrasting ideas, as we could see in the second question that we took up. The two answers that we formed were kind of contradicting each other, right? So there could be several possibilities there, but once we ask questions and children come up with their ideas, then they kind of will want to examine those ideas and validate those ideas. So I think the effort that all of us put in a classroom should go into these two tasks. So which is to examine the ideas that children come up with and validate the ideas further from there. So that is where the involvement of the children in the classroom is a cent%, which seldom happens in a regular scenario where teacher takes up the responsibility of giving away the answers to the children. I think you all can agree with me here.
Yeah, correct.
Okay, so just give me a thumbs up. Okay, so with that remark, with less than 10 minutes to go, I would like to open the floor for any questions.
Deepa Sadashivan. Deepa
Deepa
Sadashivan.
Sadashivan, I suppose you have it. Please raise your hands, and you can. So the floor is now open for questions.
How do we ensure learning outcomes?
Okay, Vijayta, I suppose, has a question here. Yes.
Yeah, I have a question to Gautam here. When we change our pedagogical method to something like this, see, we already have a tried and tested uh, method of teaching which prepares our children for the examinations that they face. But when it comes to teaching through questions, the way we discussed today, how do we ensure that the necessary learning outcomes as well as examination outcomes are achieved?
See, this was something, in fact, Vidya was, mentioning about. See, when it comes to meeting the curriculum requirements, uh, posing questions kind of does not derail us from that process, in the sense that, yeah, obviously if we take up a set of random questions, then the discussion will be digressing, it diverges out, and we may kind of discuss about n things which are not in the ambit of the curriculum. So one of the things to do here is to keep the set of questions that we wish to engage the children with more focused over the curriculum that we have in in our kitty. So as long as we frame questions that in a way that they help us to further the lesson that we are dealing, you know, then I don't find a reason why we'll not be able to comfortably address the issue of syllabus completion, or meeting the objectives, curricular objectives in the school.
Delhi by Vasu.
Dilibai Vasu, I suppose you have a question. Please fire away.
Yeah.
I think
Also tried this method in few of my classes, and I don't see any constraint of time or um, students not coping. I was able to do a good job or justice to that lesson, and I have achieved the learning outcome of the day.
yes, see, like anything else in our pursuit, it's just a matter of time, and being habitual of a particular practice. As simple as that. Once we fall into this habit, this becomes the way. And in
Over a
fact,
period of time, we start internalizing it, and we start doing it unknowingly. So it's just that one start.
yes, it is that head start, and then once we uh, you know we get into it, we'll be kicking through quite comfortably. That is what I believe, because that's something all of us go through. Especially when we kind of adopt to a new teaching practice. There is this, let's say, an incubation phase where both children and we teachers will kind of have to make an effort. But I think that's something that happens in a very small time frame. It won't take a long time. It won't take a year, perhaps. All it takes is some 4 5 sessions for you know both students and teachers to warm up to it. And once that is through, I think it settles in quite comfortably in a classroom. uh, uh, we have another 3 minutes left in the discussion, so the floor is still open for questions here.
There is a WhatsApp number I've sent in the chat. Just the message with the name and the school name. Just that.
Okay, those of you who haven't dropped in your details, there is a WhatsApp number shared in the chat window now. Kindly update us with your details, so that we can keep you in loop for any further discussions like these,
Yeah, that's okay.
and also participation certificates. And I think we can conclude this discussion here today. Thank you, Dr. Vidya, for your participation, and thank you, Vijeta, for your inputs. And thank you, all of you teachers. I know how hectic your schedules are for you to carve out an hour of time to be here in this discussion today. Uh, you know, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. It was a pleasure.